It's a nice full beard. Looking good, Sheldon. What's up, peoples? Welcome back to another episode of ADD on Video. I'm not going to bother putting up the stupid thing that says the logo is coming here soon because it's not coming soon. It's coming, but we're not sure when, so we're not going to kid around with anybody anymore. Anyways, it says below in the description what you're watching anyway, so you know why you're here. Thanks. A few weeks ago, I made an episode about my top 5 albums from 2016. If you haven't watched it yet, you can click right here and watch it now. Or maybe open it in a new window and wait until you're done this video and then watch this one. But I bring it up because when I'm not listening to music all the time, especially when in transit, the other thing I'm listening to is podcasts. I love listening to podcasts, especially ones where I learn things. It's a lot like having a book or educational TV show with you, but a lot more portable. I love it. I listen to podcasts when I go for walks. I always do when I go to the gym. I'll do like a workout where I'll have music getting me going. But once I jump on a treadmill or an elliptical machine and I'm just going to be standing there in place, I need something to really sort of stimulate me, and podcasts are the way to go. For me, anyways. I know in the past couple of years, podcasts have sort of gone through this renaissance. There was always talk of good podcasts like This American Life or Radio Lab, but I think this new trend really got kicked off by Serial. This was the podcast around a true crime story about this kid, Adnan Syed. His girlfriend dies, and nobody knows what really happened, but he's been in jail for the last couple of years saying that he's innocent, and this reporter from This American Life goes and does this, I forget if it's 10 or 12 part investigative series, and it leaves you wondering, well, did he really do it? Should he be in jail right now? There's a whole lot of twists and turns with police and ex-boyfriends and friends, and it's really gripping, and people just ate it up, myself included. Ever since then, I've been really into podcasts, and I'm constantly on the lookout for new ones, which is actually why I'm making this video today. I'm going on vacation in a couple of weeks. Yeah. Rub it in. And I'm looking for a couple new podcasts to listen to. I figure I have an interesting audience out there. You probably have diverse tastes. I want to know if you're listening to podcasts, and if so, what podcasts you recommend I try out while I go on vacation. So to give you an idea of what kind of podcasts I like already, I made a little list for you today of my favorite podcasts as of right now. A lot of these I've been listening to for a while. They're in no particular order, but hopefully you find something new that you haven't heard before. So one of the first podcasts I ever subscribed to when I first started getting into podcasts was the Freakonomics podcast. I've always been a fan of all the Freakonomics books, and I buy them and read them almost right away when they come out. They take really interesting subjects and try to look at them from really interesting angles. Sometimes it's money-based, sometimes it's purely social-based, sometimes even interviews with interesting people. I think what I'm also going to do is tell you about one of my favorite recent-ish episodes from each of these podcasts I'm going to list. So the episode I'd recommend from Freakonomics is called Why Are We Still Using Cash? It's an interesting look at just why the world still has cash when we do so much stuff electronically. Is there an upside and downside to still using cash? And they explore this from a bunch of different angles. Anyways, I'm going to leave a link for both the podcast and that specific episode downstairs here so you can find it when you're done watching this. Podcast number 2, well, in no particular order, is Planet Money. This is a podcast put out by NPR in the good old US of A. Sort of like Freakonomics, they take a different subject every week and look at it from an economic or social economic standpoint and tell really interesting stories through those lenses. For this one, I'm going to recommend you actually check out a series they did last year. It's a 5-part series on gas and oil, where they go through the process of securing crude oil from the ground, trying to sell it, following it along its journey until it actually gets into the tank of a car. But while they're doing this, they're also looking at all the other fine points of the gas industry. It's pretty interesting, so I highly recommend you check out the whole series of that. Again, I'll leave something for it downstairs. Next up on my list that's not a list is Note to Self. This is a really great podcast where the host, Manoush, looks at technology around our lives but explores it from a really humanistic perspective. So she's one of those people who's really interested in all the new tech that we have, all the new things that we can play with out there, but she's also interested in how do they affect our lives? How do they change our human behaviors? How do they change the way we have to look at life? As a person who's been in the field of tech for a while and who is sort of, what's the word I'm thinking of? Fascinated will do. Since I'm the sort of person who's fascinated by technology and how it impacts us as humans, I can't say enough good things about the show. They also like to do these cool little user participation projects, they call them, where they try and teach you something new about the way you interact with technology. So last year they did one on how to slow down that constant bombardment of information we have because of the internet. And this year they're going to be doing one on privacy. I'm not 100% sure what they're going to do, but I assume they're going to teach people about how private their stuff actually is online and how you can take steps to secure it better. That's just a guess, though. For Note to Self, I recommend checking out an episode called Is My Phone Listening to Me? It's a really interesting episode that starts with the question of, I was just singing a song out loud, and when I pressed shuffle on my iPhone, it was the first song that came on randomly, even though I have 7,000 songs. And then delves deeper into the world of, is your technology actually listening to you? Is it spying on you? And if it's not, can it be used to? This is one of those ones where if you're into technology and how your information is used or can be found, is a really great listen. Next up is a show called Reply All. I'm not really sure how to explain this one. The two hosts, PJ and Alex, come on and they either tell really in-depth stories or talk about a whole bunch of different subjects. Usually these relate to the internet in some way, or they're stories that came from the internet. But they also do some really cool regular segments, like one called Super Tech Support, where people write them in with internet-y related problems and they help them fix them. Or another segment called Yes, Yes, No, where their older boss brings them in a tweet he found online that makes no sense, and they dig deeper into what are the memes or the little inside internet things going on in these tweets and explain it to them so that they can all understand. This was one of my favorites. I listen to it almost as soon as it comes in every week. I don't know, something about it just speaks to me. I really like it. I hope you like it too. The episode that I'm going to recommend you check out for this one is called Zardulu. It's this beyond bizarre story about this woman who claims to be behind these happenings that are going on. Things that seem very random, but that catch the world's attention. So if you remember Pizza Rat, this woman claims that she is the person behind Pizza Rat. She trained the rat to run with pizza. It's super bizarre, but it's a super amazing story, and that's why I think you should listen to it. The Sporkful is another one I love, mainly because their tagline is, it's not a podcast for foodies, it's for people who like to eat. In this podcast, the host Dan Patchman goes and talks to people about food. He learns about the histories of food, little insides and outs about the restaurant business, stories of how interesting things get made. If you like food, you'll probably like this podcast. For the Sporkful, I'm going to recommend an episode called Trunk Full of Truffles. Adam follows around a truffle dealer in New York for 2 days as the guy tries to unload as many truffles as he can, because every second he holds on to them, they lose value. It's a really crazy story for fancy mushrooms. A lot of the podcasts I listen to are sort of ones where I learn something along the way, but everybody needs just some fun ones. And so Grown-Ups Read Things They Wrote as Kids is one of my absolute favorites if you need a good laugh. The show is exactly what you think it is. It's a live show that travels around Canada, and people come up and read things they wrote as children. I don't have a specific episode to recommend for this one. They're all hilarious and cringeworthy and kind of heartwarming at the same time. So just go and listen to any of them. Lastly, there's a show called Homecoming. This one's a little bit more like an old radio drama. It's a story that's acted out over 6 or 7 episodes. Usually I don't listen to ones like this, but the cast on this sort of caught my attention. It's got Catherine Keener, Oscar Isaacs, David Schwimmer, to name a few. Yes, Ross from Friends is on this podcast. And there's only about 6 or 7 episodes of this one. I found it incredibly fascinating. I got hooked on it. It's a really easy one to binge. So again, I'm not going to recommend a specific one for you. I will leave a link to where you can find them all and just go through all 6 episodes. It's great. So those are some of the podcasts that I really enjoy, the ones that get me hooked and listening. But I'm also trying out new ones, and I'm looking for a few more. So I want to know, what are your favorite podcasts? I need some new ones to listen to while I'm on vacation, especially while I'm on the plane. So please do me a favor and let me know which are your favorite podcasts down below in the comments. I really appreciate it. So that's it for me this time. If you're enjoying these videos, please do me a favor and like them and share them with people. It'll just help me get more people watching, which will be great. And as always, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel here on YouTube. And when I say here, I mean like literally right here on YouTube, if you're on YouTube. If you ever want to talk or see what else I'm up to, here's a couple social places you can find me. Don't ever hesitate to reach out and talk. I'm really looking forward to checking out your podcast suggestions, so thanks in advance, and I'll see you next time. That's really hot. Ow. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go on with this. Oh, that was bad. I think my lip is